Hi folks, welcome to today's color process video. Right, this is one of the more interesting of my metacomics that I've done in a while, at least in my opinion. As I mentioned in the typed up process post, all my metacomics up to now, they've been, they've been kind of cute gags, but with this one, I actually wanted it to have some kind of a message to it as well. And it felt good to toy around with how a comic is made, but also have some kind of a message in there as well, no matter how slight it is. I mean, it's not like it's a message nobody else has done before, but I wanted to take that and do it in my own particular way. And I felt it important to really nail the colors with this one. Um, the most important panels for me were the second panel and the last panel. Second one I'm happy with. The last one, my mileage varies. Um, like overall, I'm very happy with the color scheme I used throughout. Um, I expected this to take me ages in terms of laying down colors and figuring out what colors to use. However, pretty much from the off, I pretty much nailed all the colors almost straight away. Um, I believe, let me just check here. Did I start with the second panel? Yeah. So I pretty much started with the second panel, and I just initially laid down the just the yellow of the flames, and then on top of that, I started building all the other colors, like of the smoke clouds, the ground, etc. And yeah, it was just one of those nice cases where everything fell into place. Now, I think it helped in this case that the line work for that second panel, I'm going to be kind of tooting my own horn here, but it's pretty solid, and it really did help me in terms of not having to worry about lovingly rendering every single color that was laid on that panel, say, where I didn't have to add much. Well, I didn't add anything in the way of shading with those smoke clouds, for instance. I just laid the flat color down and left it at that. I was briefly considering adding like just the glow of the flames just to the underneath of the clouds, but I felt that was getting a bit too finicky, and I was worried that it would reduce the contrast between the clouds and the flames, so I decided to leave that as it was. Um, so yeah, I don't actually have all that much to say about my color choices there because they just kind of happened and they just worked, so that was nice. Now, the fourth panel, I have mixed feelings about it. I still think it works, but I think it could have been better. When I went in, I had it in my mind that I was going to lovingly render every single ounce of that panel, like to make it look like an actual 3D object hanging off the page. I was going to shade like every single drop, you name it. But in the end, time reasons, which is always the case, it came down to, do I want to spend an age on this comic, or do I want it to be done? Do I want it to be just good enough? And I went with just good enough. And mm, maybe part of me kind of regrets that, but overall, I'm still very happy with how this turned out. Um, One other aspect, though, just after me saying I'm very happy with it, one other aspect I'm maybe a bit disappointed by is the way I rendered the elements of that melted panel. Like obviously, I didn't draw in the guy's face or the bubble melting, so I just decided to like color them in, and I had it in my head that the way it would look would be like ink running or paint running, that like all the colors would start like mixing and blending into one another, just creating a mess. And yeah, it didn't quite work out that way, did it? Um, like I still think it works for what I'm trying to get across, but uh, it's it's certainly the least solid element color wise of like the entire comic, I find. But the rest of it, the rest of it, I'm very happy with. And one thing I was surprised by was my just like leaving the main character like unshaded. Like typically, I'd feel it doesn't look right without a bit of shade on the character, but yeah, I felt it worked here. Um, what I did in the second panel was instead of adding shading to the character, it's through my typical means where I create a new layer, set its blending mode to multiply, and that means that any color I lay down on that layer, it darkens whatever color goes underneath that. Instead of that, I set it to screen, which does the complete opposite. Any color you lay down on that layer, it will lighten the color of any color on the layer beneath that. So in this case, I put a screen layer on top of the character layer, and I just added like a bit of rim lighting to the character, just to give the impression of the flames hitting his back. Just a simple little thing. Like I had it in my head like before I sat down to color it, that I was going to almost give the guy kind of like a painted look, but I said no, no, that's there'd be no reason for that, and also it would risk muddying up the composition, like the contrast between the various elements. Like I very much wanted that guy to stand out, but I also wanted the city on fire be behind him to be a key visual that the reader would notice that first of all, and then would go to the character. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you at the next video. Take care.